What just happened with the Detroit Lions in this draft might be one of the clearest signs yet that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell know exactly what this team needed most, and they went and got it. The Lions traded up from pick 50 to pick 44 and made the move that so many fans had been hoping for. They secured Derek Moore, edge rusher out of Michigan, and honestly, this feels like one of the smartest second-round decisions Detroit has made in a long time. They gave up just a fourth-round pick to move up and make sure nobody else grabbed him first, and for a player at a position of absolute need, that is a move you make every single time. This was not about making a flashy pick. This was not about a luxury selection. This was about fixing a real problem that has been holding this team back for years. The inability to consistently pressure the quarterback when Aiden Hutchinson wasn't doing everything by himself. That has been the story of this defense. Too often, it felt like it was just Hutchinson against the world. Every third down, every critical late game drive, every moment where Detroit needed pressure, it was always Aiden Hutchinson carrying the load. Now, finally, he has help. Derek Moore brings exactly what this defense needed. Last season, he produced 10 sacks, 10.5 quarterback pressures, 19 solo tackles, and 40 total tackles. He is not being brought in to be a three-down do-it-all defender right away. He is being brought in to do one thing at a very high level, rush the passer. And right now, that is exactly what Detroit needs most. When you start imagining this defensive front, it gets exciting fast. Aiden Hutchinson on one edge, Derek Moore on the opposite side, Aleem McNeil working inside, Tyleik Williams helping strengthen the interior. Suddenly, this defensive line looks completely different than it did just 24 hours ago. That is how fast a draft can change the outlook of a season. Yesterday, the focus was on completing the offensive line with Blake Miller. Today, it feels like the Lions are completing the defensive line. They are rebuilding the trenches, and that is where championships are won. People love talking about quarterbacks, wide receivers, and skill players, but real football is still won up front. It is trench warfare. It is about controlling the line of scrimmage. We've seen it before. The Seattle Seahawks proved it with dominant offensive and defensive lines on their Super Bowl run. The Lions themselves proved it in 2023. A great offensive line got them close to the Super Bowl, but the defensive line could not consistently finish the job. That weakness has been there for too long. Now Brad Holmes is attacking it directly, and what makes this even better is the value. This was not some desperate overpay. This was not giving away future premium picks. Detroit moved up 6 spots and only gave up a 4th rounder. Compare that to other teams paying much more to move just 1 spot, and suddenly this looks like an even better piece of business. This is why so many people were against trading up in round 1. If you overpay early, you risk losing your chance at a player like Derek Moore in round 2. Instead, Detroit stayed patient, handled round 1 responsibly, and then struck when the right opportunity showed up. That is smart drafting, and this is why so many fans are calling this one of Brad Holmes' most responsible drafts yet. No unnecessary risks, no luxury picks, no messing around. They knew free agency was quiet, and they knew the draft had to be where the real work got done. So far, they are doing exactly that. This feels like a draft built for Dan Campbell football. Tough players. Physical players, grit players. Derek Moore feels like a perfect cultural fit. He looks like the kind of player who belongs in Detroit. Big body, around 265 pounds, aggressive, relentless, and built for exactly what this coaching staff wants from its defense. And let's be honest, this changes the confidence level for the fan base. A lot of people were nervous after free agency. There were questions everywhere. Was enough being done? Was this defense really getting better? Were the Lions doing enough to stay in the top tier of the NFC? After Blake Miller and now Derek Moore, that confidence is rising fast. This is starting to feel like a team that understands urgency. They know the window is open. They know the expectations are higher now. They know just being good is no longer enough. They are drafting like a team that expects to win. And the biggest part, they may not even be done. There are still more picks coming. Defensive tackle, linebacker, safety, cornerback. There are still needs to address, and Brad Holmes has never been shy about moving around the board. Another trade-up would not surprise anyone at this point, because if this front office sees their guy, they go get him. That is exactly what happened with Derek Moore. For many fans, this was the dream round 2 target for months. A perfect fit, at the perfect position, at the perfect moment. And now he is a Detroit Lion. The defensive line just got a serious upgrade, and suddenly the picture for this season looks much stronger than it did just a few days ago. So now the question becomes simple. After getting Blake Miller and now Derek Moore, how much more confident are you in the Lions confidence today than you were right after free agency, because that confidence shift is real, and you can feel it across the entire fan base right now. Just a few days ago, there was genuine concern about whether Detroit had done enough. Free agency came and went, and while there were moves, it did not feel like the kind of aggressive offseason that screamed Super Bowl push. A lot of fans were sitting there wondering if the front office was being too quiet, too patient, maybe even too conservative. Now, that feeling is changing fast. This is exactly why so many people kept saying, wait for the draft before judging the offseason. Brad Holmes has built his reputation on draft weekend, not on winning headlines in March. He trusts his board, he trusts his evaluations, and when the moment comes, he is willing to move. That is what happened here. Blake Miller helped solidify the offensive line, and Derek Moore gave this defense the edge pressure it desperately needed. 2 major positions addressed in 2 days. That is not random. That is targeted roster building. And let's talk about what this means for the rotation itself, because this matters. Before this move, if you were looking at who was coming off the edge opposite Aiden Hutchinson, the answer was not exactly comforting. DJ Wonnum is a solid rotational player, and there is value in that, but asking him to be your primary answer for an entire season, that is a very different conversation. Detroit needed more than depth. They needed impact. Derek Moore gives them that chance. He does not have to come in and be a superstar on day one. He just has to force offenses to stop putting every protection toward Hutchinson. That alone changes everything. If teams cannot constantly double team Aiden Hutchinson, someone is going to win those one-on-one battles, and that is where games change. Think about 3rd and 10 late in the 4th quarter. Before, offenses could focus everything on Hutchinson and live with the rest. Now imagine Hutchinson crashing off one side and Derek Moore flying off the other. Add Aleem McNeil pushing the pocket from the middle and Tyleik Williams helping collapse the interior, and suddenly quarterbacks are not standing comfortably in the pocket anymore. That is playoff football. That is the difference between getting close and actually finishing. This is also why comparisons to past second-round edge rushers matter. There is already a belief from many fans that Moore offers more upside for this role than Josh Paschal did coming into the league. Detroit needed a true pass rush specialist, not just another body in the rotation, and Moore fits that description. He also feels like a better long-term answer than leaning too heavily on veteran stopgaps. Even comparisons to Zadarius Smith or Alquadin Muhammad show the bigger picture. Those kinds of players can help, but the Lions needed someone they could develop inside their own system. Someone young, someone who could grow next to Hutchinson for years. That is what makes this exciting. This is not just about 2026. This is about building sustainable pressure on defense for the future. And let's not ignore the Michigan connection either. Fans love it, but beyond that, there is real familiarity there. Aiden Hutchinson and Derek Moore, both coming from Michigan, adds another layer of comfort to the transition. There is a natural fit there, both culturally and stylistically. It feels like one of those picks where you can already picture the jersey selling. And Brad Holmes deserves real credit here because this draft is showing discipline. This is not the front office chasing headlines. This is not them forcing best player available when the roster clearly had urgent needs elsewhere. They are attacking weaknesses. They are prioritizing line of scrimmage football. They are drafting like a team that understands where it failed and refuses to let it happen again. That matters. Too many teams get cute in the draft. Detroit is not doing that. They are fixing problems, and the truth is, they may still keep pushing. There's still a strong chance the Lions target linebacker help, safety depth, another cornerback, and possibly even another defensive lineman before this draft is over. Brad Holmes loves to move around the board, and after already trading up once, nobody should be shocked if it happens again. Especially in round 3, this front office knows defense still needs reinforcements, and Kelvin Shepard is going to need all the talent he can get to keep this unit improving. If Detroit can keep stacking defenders the way they just did with Moore, this defense could look very different by training camp. That is why people are calling this one of the best Lions drafts of the Brad Holmes era, not because of flashy names, because of responsibility, because of purpose, because of understanding exactly what had to be fixed and actually fixing it. And honestly, that may be the most exciting part for Lions fans. This feels like a front office that fully understands the championship window is open right now. They are not drafting for 3 years from now. They are drafting to win now. That is the mentality fans wanted to see. So now I want to hear from you. After Blake Miller and Derek Moore, do you believe Brad Holmes is building the perfect draft for Detroit? And if the Lions trade up again, what position should be the next priority? And the reason this could still get even better is because the board is starting to shape up in a very interesting way for Detroit. When When you look at what Brad Holmes has done so far, there is a clear pattern. He is not chasing names. He is chasing impact. Every move has been connected to a real weakness on this roster. Blake Miller helped protect the foundation of the offense. Derek Moore helped attack the biggest frustration on defense. Now the question becomes, where does he strike next? Linebacker feels like one of the most obvious answers. This defense still needs more speed and consistency at that second level. When you think about playoff football, especially in the NFC, you need linebackers who can diagnose quickly, close space, and handle both the run and short passing game. Detroit has talent there, but adding another aggressive physical linebacker would make a lot of sense, especially with how Dan Campbell wants this defense to play. Safety is another spot that should not be ignored. The Lions need depth, versatility, and reliability on the back end. You cannot fix the pass rush and then leave coverage exposed. The goal is balance. If the defensive line improves, but the secondary cannot hold up, offenses will still find answers. That is why a safety who can communicate, tackle, and stay disciplined becomes a valuable target in these middle rounds. Cornerback also remains on the table. This league is built around explosive passing attacks, and Detroit knows that better than anyone. You have to survive against elite quarterbacks, and depth at corner matters over a long season. Injuries happen, rotations matter, competition matters. A young corner with upside could absolutely be part of the plan if the right value appears. And then there is the possibility that Brad Holmes doubles down on the defensive line again. Honestly, that would not surprise me at all. A run-stuffing defensive tackle still feels like a smart addition. Someone who can help control early downs, take on blocks, and make life easier for everyone else around him. If Detroit can pair pass rush pressure with stronger run defense inside, suddenly this front becomes much harder to attack from any angle. That is how complete defenses are built, not with one star player, with waves. That is what the great teams do. They keep sending pressure, they keep rotating bodies, they make offensive lines tired by the fourth quarter. That is the kind of identity Detroit seems to be building toward, and that is exactly what fans have been asking for, because let's be honest, this team has already proven it can score. The offense has shown it can move the ball. Jared Goff has delivered. The offensive line has been a strength. The run game has been dangerous. The Lions were never a team lacking excitement offensively. The frustration was always on the other side. Too many games where the defense needed one stop and could not get it. Too many moments where quarterbacks had too much time. Too many late game drives where the pass rush disappeared. That is why this draft feels so satisfying for fans. It feels like the front office saw the same pain points everyone else saw and actually responded to them. That creates trust, and trust matters between a fan base and a front office. When people see the general manager making the same priorities they would make, belief grows stronger. That is happening right now with Brad Holmes. There is a reason fans are calling this one of his best draft performances so far.